Michael. Hey, congratulations. You are keeping busy in your career.
Listen, just trying to juggle that and being a dad. It's like a circus act.
You know what? Th this type of life you have to be thankful for, right? It's better than the alternative.
Do you know what it is? Do you know what I'm thankful for when I talk about what I'm juggling? I I've been doing this for 30 years, and the fact that I've been able to have a family in that time makes me really proud. It's actually the thing I'm proudest of. So not in the stereotypical way of, oh, I'm a dad and nothing else matters. That's absolute bullshit. Lots of things matter. I'm not gonna, be PC or say what's socially correct. But what I'm proud of is, despite being so obsessed with what I do for so long, I've been able to have other things that are really important to me too. And that's something that I sit down now and I say, okay, thank goodness for that, because it's such an all-consuming endeavor. Being an actor, being a writer, being a creative, whatever, an artist, it's one of those things where you go through periods where I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also speaking from what people tell me, colleagues have told me, the hundreds and thousands of people I've worked with in 30 years. Sometimes it feels like this is the only thing that matters. It's a pathology. It's something that's so addictive. Um, but being able to tangibly know that actually you found a way to make space for other things in your life is such a big deal to me. It's the thing I'm most grateful for, honestly.
No, it is true. It is true. But we are here to talk about your career and
I know.
before audiences get a chance to listen. What would you describe your career as? Because you seem to be very multi-talented because you both act and write.
hmm hmm Yeah, my favorite phrase is necessity is the mother of invention. And I probably only started writing. I've always loved reading. I started reading really, really. Apparently read before I could talk. And that does make sense to me because I've always loved books. I've always been into the literary world. But then I started working as an actor from the age of 9. So these things all happened so early for me. But I would describe myself as somebody who has always felt like I've had to do things to survive. I really do. And I'm really lucky. I'm really fortunate. And there's no blessing I've had that I'm not aware of. But I didn't write because I decided, listen, I want to forge a career as a writer. I wrote because I was aware I wasn't getting the parts I wanted to get. And if
Mhm.
I did get parts that sort of made noise or caught people's attention, I was one of the few. I was very fortunate. And I really wanted to try and turn as, take as much advantage of it as possible.
So primarily, what do you consider yourself more as today? More of an actor or more of a writer?
I would say I'm still more of an actor, and I think I'm a better actor than I am a writer. I think I don't think acting is hard. I think it's hard, of course. I think there are some people who are incredible at it and they are lauded in the way they should be lauded. But it's something that it's so natural to me. I've done it for so long that I'm probably more comfortable acting than being who I am in real life. They run so concurrent and so parallel that I went through a period, probably up until my early 30s, where I found it quite difficult to differentiate between reality and not. In terms of, I started as a child actor. I was on a show called Grange Hill, which is sort of the UK equivalent of Saved by the Bell. So I started that at 9 years old, which is about 3 years, 2 or 3 years before you really do join high school. So for me already, at the age of 9, I'm playing this guy who's 2 or 3 years older than me. And ever since then, it was this sort of warped thing where I've always felt older. I was always around older people, um, older contemporary actors, older adults, because most of the actors are adults. And so that's the thing. I've always been doing that. I really have had to take a time over the past few years to try and separate a little bit more, and just have my feet on the ground. And I'm not just talking about from a humility perspective, just from a perspective and understanding where I am and what I do. I didn't go to drama school. I started as a child actor. I never struggled as an actor. My first period of unemployment was in my early 20s. So I worked solidly from 9 to my early 20s. I didn't know what unemployment was. I didn't know that actors struggled. I heard about it, but I thought it was one of those things like when your parents tell you, don't stay out too late because they're trying to ruin your fun or that kind of thing. I didn't know how true it was. It wasn't my experience. I was very, very, very lucky.
So what thrusted you into into acting in the first place as a child?
I was definitely a show off as a child. I definitely was very, very comfortable with attention. I mean, really, the tipping point was my family are from Nigeria. We went to Nigeria when I was 6 years old. That's the first trip I remember. Yeah, it's the first time I remember being in Nigeria. I mean, I used to go as a baby, but six, I remember that trip, and I was obsessed with Michael Jackson growing up. And we were at a village concert. Everybody was dancing, and I thought this is my moment to run on stage and dance and just have a Michael Jackson moment. So it wasn't necessarily acting. It was just I just wanted to perform and be in front of people and have people clap and praise me. So I ran on stage, and I was a chubby kid, and I think that's probably what it was that endeared people to me. Everybody cheered and everybody clapped, and one of the Igbo traditions, Igbo is one of the tribes in Nigeria, and that's my family's tribe. One of the traditions is they stick money to your sweat to show their appreciation. So I was
Hmm.
sweating and I was dancing, and there was all this money piled up by my feet. And afterwards, I brought all the kids in the village of Ribena to celebrate. And I was completely hooked. And my mum said to me, "Okay, you love this. When we get back to the UK, I'm putting you in drama lessons." So that was about six. And then 3 years later, I was working, and that was it.
Wow. That's very amazing. And one of the things that we always hear about, actors that start off as children is that when they actually grow up, there's drastic changes. And
Mm.
we'll even mention that with your short film Joe Kerr in a moment, because children when they get fame or into thrust into a career very early, they grow up and they become a very very different person in this case. But
Absolutely.
you seem to be very humble and I'm speaking to me, and obviously you have your head on your shoulders. Tell us what actually grounded you through all these years.
I think I don't recommend being a child actor. I think it's I think I was lucky. Things went really, really well. But while it was happening, and definitely in hindsight, you need to be a specific type of personality. Your ego gets completely disproportionate. Anybody who gets attention, your ego changes. Ego is not good or bad, but it's when you're driven by it. So from a very, very young age, it was something that was on my shoulder, and I really, really had to be aware of. So being a father now, I wouldn't want my child to embark on this. I would, if she wanted to do it, I would rather it was when she was older and she was a little bit more rounded. But I'm an old soul. So I promise you, I don't feel that different now to how I felt when I was 10 or 11. I really don't. I really, really don't. I was always drawn to older people. All my friends were older. I was very, very mature. And actually, for a long time, people thought I was older and definitely treated me like I was older. Um, but in terms of keeping feet on the ground, it's actually a constant battle in terms of it was just trying to get perspective and realize how lucky I was to be doing what I was doing. But also as well, I experienced the bitterness of adults from a very, very young age. Some of the other actors, my teachers at my normal school, um, and they would always tell me, don't think you're this, don't think you're that, literally for doing nothing, literally just for walking or literally for smiling. So actually, I ended up becoming quite an angry teenager. I was very paranoid and was always very worried. Am I acting too loud? Am I not? Am I? I got into lots of fights because people, you get recognized and people want to come and do this and say that. And I am a 0% victim. If you come to me, I come back to you, probably worse. And sometimes maybe I even went looking for the trouble. I wasn't a scared kind of guy. I fell in love with what I did very, very young, and I felt really protective of it. And anybody who had anything to say, I was going to protect my stance, my viewpoint, wherever I was. So it was really, really difficult. And I found myself in very dangerous situations, very, very, very dangerous situations that I'm lucky to have survived a lot of the times. So it was just having to navigate a lot of fear. And it was quite a lonely thing because you end up getting put on a pedestal. So some of the adults, family members even that you might want to turn to, they're looking up to you and they're not understanding. And there is this whole narrative of you're lucky, you're lucky, you're lucky, be careful, you're lucky. And also, I'm first generation British. My parents were Nigerian immigrants. So you've got that minority mindset that you're dealing with as well. It was a lot to deal with, and I don't want to go through it again.
That being said, on the ugly side of this industry, what keeps you going, motivates you to keep on going? I mean, and not quitting in this business.
I definitely would have quit sometime in my 20s if I hadn't made all the money I had made. I made a lot of money when I was younger, and and I've never felt rich. I've always, felt like everything's going to disappear, and I became the breadwinner for my family at 12. So the money did disappear, but it was a solution to many problems and taken advantage of as well. It shouldn't have been the way it was, but I think quitting wasn't really an option because economically it was what was a lot of people relied on me. And also as well, I'm talking about some of the negative things. I was obsessed with it. I loved it. It is still to this day, it was the biggest love of my life. There's nothing or nobody, even, I'll be honest, that I've loved more. It was that acting, my career, and everything else beneath it. So I carried on going because of obsession, and also it was going well. I think, like I said, I was very lucky. A lot of actors, they go to drama school, they struggle, they come out of drama school, they don't get any work. I worked solidly up until my early 20s, so I didn't have to question anything up until then.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and tie this into because you are too a filmmaker and you made a short film called Joe Kerr Laughter is Therapy. And I noticed that the conversation that we just had, some of the themes are jokes in your short film. Tell us about this short film. Is a lot of the subjects you approach jokingly, are basically experiences from your life.
Whenever I have conversations with people, so people who are not like you, so people who aren't creatives or who aren't in the industry, a lot of the times I could tell they can't tell if I'm joking or not. And what I mean by that is I think they find some of the things I say or some of the anecdotes I tell hard to believe. They're unbelievable. So I'm always toying with that whenever I'm writing, whether it's a book, whether it's a film. And with Joe Kerr, it was me just, I actually wanted to write something funny just because, the last 5 years, everything that we've all gone through in this world, it's been quite dark. Lots of life changes personally for me as well. So I said, listen, let me just write a comedy for fuck's sake. And it still ended up being quite sad. It still ended up, you have this stand-up who's going on stage despite the fact that he's just lost his dad. But that actually happened to me. When I was 16 years old, I was doing a play at the Royal Court, which is an incredibly prestigious theatre in London, one of the most prestigious theatres in the world. And I was 16 years old. I was the lead of this play. And my dad died during the run of the play. And I remember I called up the director, Ian Rickson, very esteemed director, and we were very close. And I said to him, listen, I'm just calling you to let you know that my dad died. And he interrupted me and said, what? We're canceling the show. I was confused because that's not why I called him. I was literally calling to tell him that I'd lost my dad, so I might be a bit off tonight. My mood might be a little bit, And he was like, "What?" I said, "No, no, no. Don't you dare cancel the show. I need this. The stage is the safest place for me to be." I went on stage and had the greatest time of my life. I burst into tears as soon as the curtain went down, but I loved it. And I felt really fortunate that I actually had that place to just express a story, to be somebody, to be a bit of myself, to create this new world. I loved it, and I still love it to this day. But of course, I think it can take a toll. You need to be able to realize the weight of what it is that you're taking on. And I think at 16 years old, having just lost a dad, going on stage is probably not the best idea. But I was prepared, and I'm not joking, to fight the director physically if he canceled the show. Literally physically. He told me that, and I literally lost my temper, and some things got broken. That wasn't an option for me. So, of course, Joe Kerr, this stand-up that I've written, he goes through a similar thing. But Joe is a man. Joe is my age. Joe is not 16. So it's through my work I reflect back on my life and go, wow, that was quite extraordinary. And why did I do that? And it's me just exploring these kind of themes, but it's the therapy element of it. People grieve in different ways, and laughter really is therapy.
Why did you want to create a persona of Joe Kerr rather than just introduce the character as Michael, like yourself?
I think it's definitely a protection thing. I think it's putting a bit of a mask, a barrier. I definitely feel more comfortable telling a story through somebody else. Um, I feel more comfortable. I would feel more comfortable telling a story that's close to home and me playing it as a woman rather than me playing it as myself. I like that element of it. And also, as well, I think it's helpful for me as a person in terms of my empathy. Being an actor has made me a more empathetic person, because I even though I think there are cultural differences that we do have, and we do have to respect each other's individuality, sometimes you see an interchangeability with people that makes you realize how connected we are, and that's something that doesn't necessarily sit comfortably with me. I do see myself as an individual. I'm not sure how much of a team player I am, but I know I am happy when there is harmony and things are working in sync and there is collaboration. So, in this weird way, it's almost like an exercise exposing myself through these other people.
Well said, well said. Well, let me also take a different track of you wrote you have an upcoming children's book called Zee Zee, the
Yeah.
Humble Bee. Tell us how this actually came out. Did what was this a story that you told your daughter?
Yeah. So, going back to when I was walking down my corridor in my high school, I was about 11 years old. And my head of year said to me, so basically my principal, she said to me, "Michael, why are you smiling? The cameras aren't rolling now." And I was absolutely devastated because she was referring to the fact that by that stage, by 11, I was famous. I was a famous child star. I couldn't really go anywhere without somebody coming up to me and saying something. In general, it was positive, but that was the first negative thing anybody had ever said. And that was said to me by my principal, my head of year. And it completely broke my heart. And really and truthfully, that was a before and after. Before that day, I never got into fights, wasn't particularly angry. After that day, every multiple times a week, I would have fights. My hands used to hurt all the time because I was always having fights. Because I said to myself, the way she made me feel when she said that comment to me, the way she made me feel sad because I was smiling just because I'm a happy kid. And I was a happy kid probably because I had really supportive parents who allowed me to do what I wanted to do. And I was lucky enough to find success, and I was literally just smiling. It made me think, oh my God, there are people who don't like other people being happy. And I'm an emotional person, clearly. I wouldn't be an actor if I wasn't. It's one of the things that make me a good actor. My emotions are readily available, but I felt that deeply. I felt it in a way that I wish I didn't feel it, but it's inevitable. I'm
Hmm.
very sensitive, very emotional. So I got into fights every day. If anybody said one thing, or you're that kidding Rachel, or you're this, I'll punch him. I'd punch him. I'd hit him. I mean, constantly. I was in physical pain all the time, and didn't win all the fights either. So this book was basically a love letter to my child self. And it was in my ether, it was in my head ever since I became a dad. And I just remember looking at my daughter and thinking, my goodness me, like, imagine her just smiling about something that made her happy and somebody telling her not to, how much that would devastate her, how kids are so impressionable, how school and childhood are our formative years. And I would never want her to be as angry as I was. You know, all the success I was having as a child into early adulthood, I always had this anger inside, this temper. Um, and I really do think I can link it back to that day. So Zee Zee the Humblebee is to teach kids, to teach adults, to teach kids you don't have to dim your light to let others shine, and to let adults know that you can teach humility in a loving way. Because I just think the older we get, the more baggage we have, and life is tough. A lot of times people don't mean things personally, but we have to be careful with our words, especially when we're talking to kids, you know. Um, and I do think as well, there were certain biases that came into play when that teacher said this to me. I don't think she was happy at this happy young black kid, you know. And again, these maybe are chips on shoulders that we carry, but the fact is, I had to deal with that, and I felt like I didn't have anyone to turn to. My daughter, she will always have me to turn to when it comes to that. And again, it's a creative thing, you know. So I feel like it's a selfish, selfless act writing the kids' book.
That is admirable for yourself. And I also understand you wrote more novels in the past.
Yeah, I've written two books. The first book I wrote was called Black Shoes, and that was in 2009. And 5 years later, I wrote my second book, Vivian's Couch, which we're trying to turn into a TV series. So this is my first kids book.
Wow, that is very impressive. And I'm just curious. Have your daughter seen this book already?
My daughter has seen it. She really, really loves the illustrations. My daughter, she's 4.5 years old. So, in terms of being able to appreciate things, it's only starting to happen now. But let me tell you something, kids can make you very humble because if they're not impressed, they're not impressed. You know, and this is me not even being self-effacing. If they're not impressed, they're not impressed, you know. But she has given it the seal of approval.
You know what? That's what actually counts, Michael. And that's how we keep the score, right? Now, of course, you are still in the acting world, and you have a very important show coming out pretty soon. Out There, could you tell us about this role that you're taking on for the ITV?
Yeah, out there is honestly, you never know how something is going to be received, but we are really, really excited about it. ITV are excited about it. Um, you know, the it's I would consider it a UK version of Breaking Bad slash Ozark.
Hmm.
You know those shows? Yeah.
Yes.
It's it's so good. The cast, oh my God, the performances. So it's a new 6 part series, and it's set in a place called Brecon in mid Wales, and it tells the story of rural county lines drug dealing, and it's also a piece that talks about community and modern farming, grief and loss. So very universal themes. And I play a character called Scott Foley. He's ex-army. He's highly intelligent, highly articulate, uh, but he's enigmatic. He claims to work as a land property agent, carrying out feasibility acquisition studies in the area. But number one, what the fuck is that? Does that job title even exist? And if it does exist, is that what he's really doing? So from the moment you meet him, he's all smiling with his pearly whites. You're not really sure who is he connected to, and of course, so we said we've got the county lines drug dealing element. Is he part of that? Is he a greedy property developer? Does he work for a nefarious firm? It's brilliant. And what I loved about it is while I was playing him, he reminded me of somebody I was dealing with at the same time. And I really, really hated that person. That person caused me and my family a lot of stress for 18 months. And what was bizarre was whilst filming it, the stress started to dissipate because I could start to see where that individual was coming from. And it goes back to that thing about empathy, where acting can help you have empathy. I don't really think I've disliked a character I've ever played. I started playing the character and I was biased towards the character, you know. Um, when people are desperate, people do desperate things. People have their own motivations. It's a miracle that some of us get along in this world because we all have our own baggage. And so Scott is a very interesting character, and I can't wait for everybody to meet him.
Well said, well said. Well, I have very little time left, and I want to leave with one last thought, Michael, because I know we touched upon it for ourselves already throughout this entire conversation. But for you personally, what legacy would you like to leave behind, especially for, your daughter?
Mm. It's such a beautiful question. When you ask me that question, I feel like crying because I love questions like that. And I don't know if I can necessarily answer it accurately because I'm sure it's going to change. But I really, really hope that she thinks that I, I try to just give out to the world instead of taking from it. I really hope she feels that. So I try to learn and I try to use whatever I learned to do good writing, talk to people from all over the world, different backgrounds. And I would love it if she can do that as well, because that's one of the things I love about acting. I've got to meet so many different people from all corners of the world. I never even have an assumption of what someone's going to look like before I meet them, because honestly, it often, you never know, it changes. And I love that. I love that. Like talking to you, for instance. So I hope that she ends up being a curious explorer like her dad, and that she can do it in the most fun, free, and safe way as possible. I want her to spread her wings and fly like Zee Zee in the book that I've written. I want the legacy to be that, just try and beat your own path and know that actually the happiest people I've met in my life and that I've known in my life, there's something individual about them. It's not that they think they're better than other people, but they don't necessarily follow the crowd. And I want her to be that kind of person. Do what you want to do.
Well said, Michael. You are a delightful conversationalist. Thank you very much for talking to us about your career. And you know what? I'm not jealous of your happiness. I like your happiness. So thank you very
You're
much.
too handsome. You're too handsome to be jealous. You can't say anything to me. Thank you very much indeed. I really
Really
appreciate it.
appreciate it. Let's do this again sometime. Thank
I
you.
hope so.
Bye now.